Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. Today is Tuesday, July 29th, 2025. Today is day 662 since October 7th of 2023, 662. Updates from the Gaza Strip each and every day continue to be mortifying, and literally dozens of people continue to lose their lives. A couple of days ago on Sunday, Israel announced, I think I talked about this yesterday, the temporary humanitarian pauses from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. This was in certain areas of the Gaza Strip. There were over 100 aid trucks that contained 1,200 tons of food that were supposed to enter the Strip, and I believe entered on Sunday. 25 people at the time of that writing were announced as having been killed by Israeli fire, specifically while seeking aid. But note the total number of deaths on Sunday were more than 50 people during what many in the world, were calling a humanitarian pause. All 55 UN aid trucks that entered Gaza on Sunday were unloaded by crowds before reaching their destination. This was announced by the UN World Food Program. Another UN official stated that nothing on the ground had changed and there were no alternative routes open. Israel's been experiencing increased international pressure on the delivery of aid as the number of people who are dying of starvation has continued to rise. Israeli fire killed at least 78 Palestinians across Gaza yesterday, including at least 25 people who were seeking food. So the death toll on Sunday was more than 50. The death toll on Monday was more than 75 people. 78 people were killed. That included a pregnant woman whose baby was delivered after her death and then died, unable to sustain life. There was no immediate comment from the Israeli military. The worst case of famine is currently being played out in Gaza. That is from the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification. This is the international body that declares the degrees of hunger, malnutrition, famine. They said that there's mounting evidence of widespread starvation, malnutrition, and disease that are driving a rise in hunger-related deaths. They issued an alert, which does not constitute a formal famine declaration, but warns of widespread death if immediate action is not taken. Now note, the IPC doesn't have access to be able to enter into Gaza. So the reports have to depend on the health workers, the hospital reporting, etc. And so this is from an outside agency that's looking in, that's saying unless action is taken immediately, there will be widespread death. There is real starvation in Gaza. Even President Trump says so. Yesterday, he made those comments, adding that civilians have to get food and safety right now. The U.S. will work with its European allies to distribute more aid to Gaza. And may I just say, from air, it is completely inadequate. If airdrops are the solution, we will see continued hunger-related deaths. Trump's statements have broken with Prime Minister Netanyahu, who insists there is no starvation in the Gaza Strip. I wanted to let you know about a report that came across my desk. It was an investigation by 972 Magazine and Local Call. They revealed that Israel is engaging in something that's called double tap airstrikes. Now, what this means is targeting and killing the rescue workers that go to a scene after there are initial strikes. They're there to help wounded and endangered people. This practice destroys efforts at aid, ensures that first responders and rescue teams cannot make it to sites that have been hit. Double tap airstrikes are widely considered illegal under international law because they cause further harm, not to militants, but to civilians. And they're targeting the very people who are first responders, who are actors of humanitarian assistance, who should be protected according to international law. In addition to this practice, there have been instances where the military has blocked ambulances and health personnel from entering strike zones where children have been gravely injured. We've heard reports also in the occupied West Bank, just even in past days, where Palestinians are injured and then ambulances and healthcare workers are prevented from giving them an immediate response and care, and thus they ultimately succumb to death. Two leading Israeli human rights organizations, B'Tselem and Physicians for Human Rights Israel, yesterday released two reports. They, as Israeli human rights organizations, have accused Israel of committing genocide against Palestinians. They said an examination of Israel's policies in the Strip in Gaza has horrific outcomes. It leads to unequivocal conclusion that Israel is taking coordinated and deliberate actions to destroy the Palestinian society. The reports are the first time any Israeli group has used the term genocide to describe Israel's actions. An Israeli government spokesperson strongly rejected the report's findings, with the Israeli military calling the allegations entirely unfounded. Germany has said they will join in the farce of airlifting to deliver aid to Gaza, closely coordinating with France and the UK, who are willing to provide airlifts for food and medical supplies. As we've said time and time again, there are thousands of trucks waiting at the Rafah border. Kerem Shalom has the ability to be able to let trucks in. The UN and other aid agencies have mechanisms by which to adequately distribute food to the more than 2 million people in Gaza. And those efforts are being blocked, where the blocking of aid, assistance, and food is being used as a weapon of war. Airlifts and airdrops will just, they're not even a Band-Aid on a gaping wound. I also know from our meetings today that numerous sirens were heard announcing incoming missiles in central Israel. I've not yet heard where they were coming from. I assume the Iron Dome or other mechanisms disabled them before they could strike or land. But I would imagine that they came from Houthi rebels in Yemen. That's not yet confirmed. I'll talk about that tomorrow. Related to the Houthis, yesterday they said that they had rescued 10 seafarers from a Greek-operated cargo ship that was called Eternity Sea, which they attacked and sank in the Red Sea earlier this month. The UK government is now more actively weighing the recognition of a Palestinian state, prompted by public revulsion at the images of starving children in Gaza and intense cross-party pressure from lawmakers on Prime Minister Keir Starmer, according to 2 senior government officials. Now, since I got that news update, we heard that, in fact, the Prime Minister's office, or the Prime Minister specifically at UN in New York City, that UK said they would recognize a Palestinian state in September, unless the Israeli government takes substantial actions to address the appalling situation in Gaza. That's a direct quote. Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of the UK, said recognition would be contingent on a ceasefire, halting annexation plans in the West Bank, and committing to a long-term peace process that would lead to a 2-state solution. The Dutch government yesterday announced that it imposed travel bans on far-right Israeli cabinet ministers. This was including Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, and that they would summon Israel's ambassador to denounce the unbearable and indefensible situation in Gaza. That was from the Dutch government. The EU Commission yesterday recommended curbing Israel's access to the EU's flagship Horizon Europe research funding program after calls from EU countries to increase pressure on Israel to alleviate the aid crisis in Gaza. A few updates from the United States. On Monday yesterday, Donald Trump said that the U.S. will implement food centers in Gaza as he believes starvation exists, as I mentioned previously, among the population and especially children. Now, this contradicts statements, again, made by Netanyahu, who said there's no starvation in Gaza. But President Trump said that the U.S. is going to work with European partners to ensure the delivery of food and aid. Today, there were 40 U.S. senators who signed a letter urging the resumption of ceasefire talks, which have essentially imploded, by sharply criticizing an Israeli-backed American organization. You're well familiar, the Gaza Humanitarian Aid Foundation. The letter was addressed to the Secretary of State Rubio, to Special Envoy Steve Witkoff. Al Jazeera reported that 40 U.S. senators signed and sent that letter. I wanted to close with an update on Christians in the Middle East. Friends, there's been another attack on the community of Taipei. This happened over the weekend, 2:30 in the morning local time yesterday. So Monday morning, 2:30 local time. Masked men broke into the Palestinian Christian village of Taipei to the east of Ramallah. They torched cars. They sprayed hostile graffiti in Hebrew. This incident is happening only 20 days after settlers previously broke into the town and set fire near the ancient Church of St. George. There was a statement from the Forum of Holy Land Christians that made 3 demands that I want to call to your attention. They said, first, there's a need for an in-depth investigation. They're calling for a neutral international body to intervene and investigate the incident. Second, it's important to hold the terrorists, they're speaking specifically of the Israeli settlers, accountable, since apology alone won't guarantee that such attacks will not be repeated again. You'll recall that the U.S. ambassador to Israel during the first attack, Ambassador Huckabee, called the Israeli settlers that perpetrated the attacks against Taipei terrorists. Third, there is a call that there is not enough to act just against the terrorists, but it's important to act against those who incite them. In the meantime, we encourage Palestinian Christians in specific and people of goodwill in general not to lose hope, since we're confident of the vast majority of those who live in the Holy Land from all religions and denominations want to live in peace, while respecting the right of each other to live in security and dignity in their homeland. We urge all of those who have some influence to act firmly before it's too late, since such incidents contribute negatively not only to the increased fear among Palestinian Christians, but also for reducing the belief in the chances for reconciliation and peace between Israelis and Palestinians, for which we continue to pray and work despite all challenges. So we continue to work alongside the Forum of Holy Land Christians, all Christians in Palestine, in Israel, and the broader Middle East. And we commit to praying alongside them. May God go before us in the name of Christ. Amen.